Glad you're here.
Thank you, Ann, and we almost made it at 4 o'clock today. What time is it, Ann?
4:01.
Oh my goodness, we missed it by 1 minute, but we're close.
And my watch made me fast.
Hey, my name is Tom Jones, pharmacist, and this is Menopause Lane. We're taking the trail down Menopause Lane this week, session 4. Just want to thank you for being here. And if you're here, that means you're interested in our programs. If you're here, please let us know and let us know how we can help you. Programs, we want to answer questions. We've got all sorts of different segments, and we're just happy to be here talking to you and going over some of the things that deal with everyday life. Next week, we're going to deal with the guys. This week, we're dealing with the ladies. This is called Menopause Lane. Next week, it will be Andropause. And are we in for a treat with the guys? So let's take it away. All right. We talked about what is menopause. We talked about the symptomatology. We talked about all of the different facets that play a role in menopause. Now let's talk about a subject that doesn't even many people consider to be a part of menopause, but it certainly is. And this is called osteoporosis. And it can be devastating for women as they age through that process of the called menopause into postmenopause, and it can give havoc to these people as they go forward in their lives. All right, osteoporosis is a bone weakening disease or disorder, and it actually involves the loss of bone mass, therefore increasing the amount of fractures, breaks, and causes havoc as we get older in our lives. And menopause plays a major role in this. 1/3 of all women are affected by menopause. That means 1 out of 3. 1 out of 5 guys are affected by the loss of bone in andropause. So it's a devastating disorder that actually affects the bone mass and the strength of you as you grow older. It's basically kind of called the silent disease because most people don't even realize or even think about menopause as being a culprit in the osteoporosis field. So the risk of actually going into osteoporosis increases with age. Therefore, the breakdown of bone actually far exceeds the new remaking of the bone. So therefore, the loss of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone in the menopausal era of a lady's life is a direct cause of osteoporosis. So there's other risk factors, one being Asian, one being white, one being small-framed, one having a family history of osteoporosis, early menopause, a diet low in calcium, and a diet low in vitamin D. We're going to think about that later on as we travel that road and come up with some of the areas of how we can prevent some of the bone loss from occurring. Other risk factors are smoking. Smoking is a culprit in lots of different disorders, and this one is a really big culprit. Also, alcohol use. Excessive alcohol use contributes to lower bone density, and a sedentary lifestyle. So get up and at 'em is the name of the game to help prevent osteoporosis. Standing and exercising on your feet stimulates bone growth, and it actually is one of the key risk factors that you can totally prevent yourself by being an active individual. All right, now that we've talked about some of the risk factors, let's talk about how you as an individual can help deviate or alleviate some of the problems with osteoporosis. Number 1, start early. It sounds simple, it sounds easy, and it's very, very true. Start early in your progression of developing a game plan, and that can be fantastic as far as prevention of the osteoporosis. It's a disease that affects people as they age, but it really begins in childhood. So your eating habits, your activities in childhood, basically you have your peak bone mass at 16. So everything from there goes down. So therefore, you need to develop that practice early in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. You need to actually have that game plan set into action. It's very important to instill not only if you are developing your plan, but in your children's plans, because you can help alleviate some of the problematic situations that develop later in life. Don't have them smoke. Don't smoke yourself. And if you do smoke, quit. That's one important factor. Exercise, exercise, exercise. Again, what I said was, if you stand on your feet, then you are helping to rebuild the bone. And don't drink too much alcohol, because alcohol depletes the bone out of the body. So, number 2, exercise. Exercise, exercise, exercise. Put this into your agenda. Again, something like what I like to do is dance. Standing on your feet, dancing is a tremendous form of exercise. A good regular exercise program will build bone density. It will build muscle mass. And all of that prevents bone loss. So therefore, a weight-bearing exercise program such as walking, jogging, you need to do this at least 3, 4, 5 times a week to get yourself into the habit of being good for yourself. Again, it's up to you to basically develop that strategy. Get with a physical therapist. Get with an exercise fitness expert. Get with someone who has the ability to develop that program for you. And there's plenty of people out there. There's also programs that you can develop even by watching television. If you're sitting there at night watching television and you're just laying around, not doing anything, you know that you can do better than that. And we suggest that you develop that good plan. Cheryl Bates Meredith, thanks for joining today. I just popped up her name in my Facebook Live feed. All right, the next part is to eat healthy. You want to select in your diet good calcium food products. All right, the first thing you think about is milk. Milk can be a really, really good product for you. The low-fat dairy products really are good. The lactose-free if you're tolerant to the dairy products. So you can actually have calcium fortified orange juice. So therefore, there's lots of areas. Bread is now fortified with calcium in a lot of cases. So there's ways to get into your diet extra calcium, because that's something that you need to actually be aware of. Adequate calcium levels really depend on the individual, but generally from 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams per day. A dietitian or a pharmacist or a doctor or someone who specializes in osteoporosis can allow you to get more calcium in your diet. And Lacey Mead, thanks for coming in. We will definitely talk about hypothyroidism. We are going to get hypothyroidism, and I actually have already developed a program on motivation. So we got you covered, Lacey. So thanks for checking in with us. Now, the next subject I'm going to talk about is the part that goes along with calcium. And this one is the misunderstood, just not well-known part of the osteoporosis prevention program. Vitamin D. Maintaining adequate, good levels, excellent levels of vitamin D is crucially important, because without vitamin D, the calcium really doesn't go in the bone well. So you need to be very, very progressive in your consumption of vitamin D. To give you a little, now we've talked about vitamin D before, but this time we're going to talk about it a little bit more, because here it is super, super important to help the calcium absorption in the body, because it needs vitamin D to be successful. All right, let's talk about the adequate levels of vitamin D. Vitamin D actually helps in the absorption of calcium in the intestine. So in the gut is where the activity has to be. All right, the lack of vitamin D causes calcium-depleted bone, which is called osteomalacia. And that further weakens the bones, and it actually increases the risk of fractures, because you do not want to have a fracture as you grow older. It stops you. A lot of times, if you're in the elderly realm, you have a broken hip, it's not long before you pass away. So we want to, at all costs, keep you healthy and keep you steady on your feet, so that you don't break a bone, so that you take care of your structure. And it's so vitally important, because it slows you down tremendously when you have problems with with calcium and with vitamin D and with osteoporosis. All right, vitamin D is absorbed by the skin. The activity of vitamin D is when you are in the sunlight. So that helps the skin. It helps the body. It helps so many different facets of the body, of which the calcium absorption is really important. So vitamin D is super important in the prevention of osteoporosis. How do you get vitamin D? Well, if you're in the sun 10 to 20 minutes per day, every day, from about 10 o'clock in the morning till 2 in the afternoon, you will get a certain amount of vitamin D. But you know what I've found is really interesting, even in Florida, where they have lots of sunlight and people play golf a lot. Some of the old-time golfers really don't have enough vitamin D3 in their body. It just doesn't take hold in their body. It just doesn't go into their system. So, vitamin D is a real concern in America, because there is lots of deficiency. 57%. 57. That's over one half of older folks. And I guess I'm in that category, and Ann isn't, but I am. But 57% of older people have a deficiency in vitamin D. And Dave Sweeney, thank you so much for calling in, for coming in on Facebook Live. You know, it's really amazing how little vitamin D is absorbed and how important it is in the body. Vitamin D is one of the most important aspects of the whole program of staying well, of building up the immune system. But here, it protects the bone. It is so, so important. So here we want to actually, people who live in Florida, when they go play golf all the time and they wind up with too little vitamin D in their body, one rule, absolutely one equivocal rule: do not go without knowing your levels of vitamin D at all times, because it helps so much. It helps so much in so many different ways, and here it is a great, great preventative of greater bone loss and osteoporosis, osteopenia. And here's the difference between osteopenia. Osteopenia is the early stage of osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is bona fide, tremendous loss of bone density. So that's the equation on this part. So you've got to know, though, you've got to know the vitamin D level that you have in your body at all times. So, and it's not something that doctors really test that much for. There's a test, a saliva test for it, but you need to know at all times. So request your doctor, and you may have to pay out of pocket for it. But let's face it, if you can prevent a fracture, remember what I said, one third of all ladies who go into menopause will have osteoporosis in their lifetime. 1/5 of all men will have osteoporosis or weak bones in their lifetime. That's huge. That's humongous. So you've got to know your vitamin D levels in the body. Again, 57%. That's over 1/2 of all elderly people. Older people have a deficiency. They do not have enough. And, all right, so there's not many really good sources food-wise for vitamin D. You've got the eggs, you've got fatty acids, the salmon, you've got cereal fortified with vitamin D, but typically it's not enough.
Milk.
The question is, what is the adequate dosage? And you've got controversy all across the board. I'm saying that again. They don't really know is what the answer is. Now, a golden rule, and I will always say, go get your levels checked. Generally speaking, they're going to tell you to have too low a level. So I want you to do your research and find out what level you have, and then I want you to keep that level in the 40s and 50s. Do not let it go down into the 30s and 20s. The lower level that they indicate is 30. But I wonder if that's really, really enough. I'm just saying, what do I know? I don't know, but I'm reading a lot, and some practitioners like higher levels. But you make that determination yourself. You be the advocate. You know what your levels are, and then make sure that they don't dip below 30 ever, because then you are vulnerable, and that can be detrimental to your bone health particularly. All right, 10 to 20 minutes every day, sunshiny days, 10 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Get that vitamin D, build your levels back up. Avoid taking, also, now let's get back into osteoporosis and calcium. Avoid taking drugs and pharmaceuticals that actually will deplete calcium and magnesium from the body, because there are medications that will deplete them from the body, and that's not good at all. So there are foods, there are medications that actually will deplete it, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Actually, we will right now. Steroids. If you've been on any corticosteroid, it's going to lower your capacity to absorb calcium. Also, thyroid medication. So if you're taking a thyroid medication for hypothyroidism, and Lacey just asked about that, we're going to talk about that further in another session, much more in depth, but that will lower the ability to calcium to stay in the body. Also, seizure medicines. Some of the seizure medicines are culprits of drug interactions that allow calcium to not be absorbed in the body. If you require any of these medications, then I want you to be an advocate for yourself and actually make sure that you take enough calcium. From the old school, I was taught that calcium was good almost in all cases. There are some controversial articles out now that say calcium is not as good when you take it as a supplement. I'm still open as far as that. Those articles. I want to be certain that that individual has enough calcium to maintain the bone integrity. So I'm not completely assured that these studies I just want to make sure the studies were right, because you do not want to have a break. You do not want to have a fracture. You do not want to have osteopenia or osteoporosis as you grow older. So, from the medication standpoint, how can you make sure that you don't get full-blown osteoporosis? Well, the first thing is make sure that you exercise every single day, or at least 5 out of 7 days. Weight-bearing exercise, so vitally important. Another area that's a little bit controversial now, but hormone replacement therapy. I'm from the old school again. we have always helped people determine what levels of hormones, by balancing hormones, the body needs. So I'm not an advocate of synthetic hormones at all. I've always gone with the bioidentical hormones. That is controversial, absolutely is controversial, but there's one thing for certain. Estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone all play a beneficial role in osteoporosis prevention. When you have lower levels of those three hormones, you do not have a balanced hormonal level that encourages prevention of osteoporosis. So that's very controversial, but guess what? You have to take all of these considerations into effect because low estrogen in particular has a very detrimental effect as far as the calcium in the body. So, all right, osteoporosis is first noticed generally later. It's not something that's on the first line of noticing about an individual. You have to be your advocate. If you are not your advocate, you run the chance of having a broken bone, having a fracture, having something devastatingly happen and not even have any awareness of that occurring. So you have to be your own advocate. So the first thing that you want to do is you need to have a bone density test to determine where you are. And sometimes insurance covers it, sometimes it doesn't. So is that worth having peace of mind later on in life? That's a great, great question. So osteoporosis is a very serious part, and it's an overlooked part of the menopausal era of your life. Most people don't even think about it as far as prevention. Most people just kind of breeze through menopause, or at least, and never even considered that it is one of the most important aspects of why you need to have a proactive approach to menopause, premenopause, regular menopause, and postmenopause. You can never do too much to prevent osteoporosis. So in closing, I want to actually recommend to you, I want to plead with you that you take this into heart, that you take this and actually develop a plan of action so that you have strong bones, that you don't run into the situation in which you do not have, you don't even think about osteoporosis and it's there. Osteopenia occurs, osteoporosis occurs, you have a broken bone, then the reaction part is later. That's not good, because some of the drugs that actually treat osteoporosis are not really good drugs. They cause more side effects than you would ever imagine. So osteoporosis is something that you want to prevent at absolutely all costs. It is a disease. It is one of the most horrendous diseases out there. It's I think it's 7th or 8th most cause of death in America. You want to be healthy. I want you to be healthy. My name is Tom Jones. This has been part 4 of the Travel Down Menopause Lane. Tomorrow we conclude our series, part 5. We're going to be right here at 4 o'clock. And osteopenia, Dave is asking me the question. Osteopenia is the first phase of osteoporosis. It's not full-blown. It's when there is a small amount of bone loss. It's not to the level, and I don't remember the DEXA figures, but it seems like -1 to -1.7 or something like that. But osteopenia is the precursor to osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is when there is tremendous bone loss, and you could actually, by exercising or sneezing, have a fracture. And when you do that, oh my goodness, that's when it's really, really, really bad. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Lacey. All of my folks out here, thank you so much for coming in today. We love you all, and I'll be here tomorrow with session 5. Tomorrow morning, Today with Tom, we'll be here early. Tomorrow afternoon, we'll have our final session of Menopause Lane and the travel down Menopause Lane. Love y'all. Thanks. Bye. And
Bye.
and you behave yourself.
I will do
All
my
right.
best.
Bye.